Hello and welcome, wordsmiths and story seekers. I am your host, Daniel Willcocks, broadcasting from the shadowy halls of Devil's Rock HQ, and I'm thrilled today to introduce you to my brand new podcast, The Writer's Chair. Now, I'm not new to the podcast space, and for those who have listened to some of my stuff before, you may be aware that I'm quite informal, I might ramble, I get to the point a lot of the time, but I'm going to be straight and upfront with you. This podcast, I am number one, thrilled to finally be recording the first episode. This podcast has been very much on my agenda for months at this point. I think maybe about 6 months as per the day, as of the day of recording. And yeah, I want to kind of like speak to you a little bit about who I am in case this is your first time ever encountering Daniel Willcocks. I want to speak to you about what this podcast is going to be about specifically, and why I'm doing it and why it's all kind of come back. So, kind of to jump straight into it, I am Daniel Willcocks. I have been writing since 2014, maybe even 2013. Published my first book in 2015, which was a conversion of a stage script that I wrote for university when I saw that Kindle Direct Publishing allowed you to put books on the Amazon store. And I tried the self-publishing thing just literally to have a book in my hands. And then in 2015, I published my first fiction work, which was a horror story called Sins of Smoke. And the rest, as they say, is history. You'll probably get snippets of my full journey throughout this podcast as I speak to guests, as I bring people on and things. But essentially, I published my first book in 2015. Roaring success. Into Smoke went to the top of the horror charts in October of 2015, which was wonderful for a first book. And the last 10 years, I have ghostwritten for clients. I had a spell of 5 years in which I was pretty much a full-time author. In 2019, I had the luxury of being able to quit my day job, pursue ghostwriting, pursue writing my own books, really be in this space and explore. And in my definitely 10 years now, at least, of writing, I have written at least 70 books at this point, potentially approaching 80 now, including all the ghostwritten books, hundreds of episodes of podcasts. In 2016, I helped co-found the Other Stories podcast, which is a horror fiction short story podcast that shares its stories every single Monday on the Other Stories feed, and that's still going, and the guys are still very much doing that, and I stepped back from that a lot. So I was involved in the making of that. That's now reached, we won an award in 2020, 13 million downloads. It's a whole load of fun. So I'm not going to spew 1,000 pieces of credentials. All that to say, I feel like at this point I've finally reached a point in which I belong in the space and that I have something to offer. From 2020 to 2023, I coached authors. 2024, 4 years. I coached authors. I helped authors write their books. I motivated them. I spoke to them. I, coached a lot on mindset and all the stuff behind books. It isn't necessarily about the writing, but it's a lot about the psychology and how you think and what people think it should be to be a writer versus the realities of what it is, because it is fun, it is glorious, and it's a lot of hard work. And connecting with other authors is a great way to do that, which, is kind of what this show is. Who is this show for? This show is for anyone who wants to get into the behind the scenes of my mind. I will have episodes in which I kind of discuss different directions I'm taking. I am the founder of Devil's Rock Publishing, and I've got a bunch of different projects and things on the go at the minute. So I will have episodes in which I can talk to you and share stories of lessons I've learned, mistakes I've made, as there have been plenty. And also just, projects and things that are upcoming. I will get into this way more in potentially a future episode. I'm very hardcore at the minute, writing in a series with my co-writer, Rob Howley. And that's a horror series that we're launching, and we'll launch in 2 weeks as of the time of this recording. So I will certainly, he doesn't know this yet, I will bring Rob on. We will have sessions in which we sit down and we discuss what we're doing, and we're sharing it because we're very, very excited. I've learned a lot over the last 10 years. Rob has been writing for, I think, 2 or 3 years, still somewhat early in like the publishing journey, but at the same time, absolutely killer writer. So lessons from that as we explore the launch of this series, share its successes, learn from its failures, that kind of thing. I will be interviewing people. So one of my favorite things about podcasting is that I can reach out to friends, colleagues, strangers, and just say, I really want to find out more about you. Please share what it is you've learned. And by proxy, obviously you as a listener then get that chance to learn from them, get a moment inside their head. I tend to write more in the darker side of the sphere. So primarily, I will be bringing on people like horror writers, dark fantasy, thriller, those kind of people that I read, I digest, I admire. But then conversely, I still have friends that are in the romance space and the cozy mystery space. So it's not going to be an entirely dark fiction podcast, but that's going to be a heavy element of it because that's my background and that's what I'm interested in the most. I will mark it by saying as well, this this isn't the first podcast I have launched and run, and people who are listening, and I can hear a couple of people in my head who might be listening to this, who know my journey will know that I've done quite a few podcasts up until this point, and I keep packaging them, putting them aside, and then coming back to it. And there's something about that boomerang that I clearly can't let go of because I do genuinely really enjoy talking to writers. In 2017, I believe it was, I did the Story Studio podcast with one of my co-writers and co-founder of the other stories, Luke Condor, and we had 50 episodes. That was my first entry into this podcast sphere of speaking to people, of learning the lessons, of kind of trying to be a better host. And it's so funny going back and listening, for me, listening to those episodes because they were very much young Dan trying to act as writer. And obviously that's how you begin, but that's not how you end up. So over the years, I've shared a lot of that off. I'm now a lot more honest with my journey, again, sharing those highs, sharing those lows. And so I did the Story Studio when I went full time in 2018 actually. It was 2018, 2019. I can't remember anymore. 2019. Anyhow, irrelevant. The point is, I did the podcast called The Great Writer Share. And again, that was sharing motivational stuff, sharing inspiration, finding out about authors, what makes their mind tick. So it was less about books and writing craft, although that came into it, and it was much more about mindset and psychology and motivation and routine and the kind of mechanics of getting yourself to the keys and writing a story. And I did that for well over a year or so. I brought on other co-hosts to that. There was Holly Line, there was John Crinnan, there was Faye Trask who was helping me with that. At the same time, I co-hosted the Next Level Authors podcast with the wonderful Sasha Black, who is now doing wonderfully great things in sapphic romance and fantasy, and it goes from strength to strength. It's a beauty to watch. And we did that. We did the Next Level Authors for a year or two during COVID, which was one of my really primary coping strategies at that point to get through what was a really, really weird moment in time of being in a house by yourself and not being able to go out elsewhere. And then after that, I ended up doing a podcast called Activated Authors, which was an extension of the Activated Authors coaching group that I was doing. And again, interviewing authors and again, sharing all those strategies and those things. So I'm not new to this space. I have a whole backlist of stuff. But one of the things that I found has been a constant point of contention for myself, along in the background with a lot of personal upheaval and stuff that's made it quite difficult to podcast, is these were very regular. This is coming out every week. This is every Friday, every Tuesday, every Monday, whenever those episodes came out. And I want to set the expectation straight from the start that I plan on doing these regularly. I plan on sharing and bringing people onto the podcast and putting out content. I'm not committing to doing a weekly schedule at this point. So that's kind of like the big thing for me. I have fun. This is purely a chance for me to not worry about the numbers, not worry about anything else. It's just enjoyment. It's education for me. It's networking. It's sharing that information with you and allowing you a glimpse into other people's heads and my own head to try and understand this beautiful, chaotic, glorious space that we call writing. So that's kind of what this show is. It's for writers. It's for readers. A lot of the interviews that I've got lined up over the next few weeks are where I deep dive into an author's particular book. So it's books that I've read over the last 6 to 12 months that I've really, really enjoyed. I've connected with those writers. I've brought them on to speak very specifically about their books, which is a new angle for me and which I'm really enjoying because I really get to understand more of the thought process and the decisions and the craft and that kind of thing. So, yeah, that's what to expect. There'll be some behind the scenes of my stuff. There'll be just me sharing general lessons. One of the episodes coming up really, really soon is going to be my biggest lessons learned from 10 years of having published a book. So that will be coming. I'll be bringing on my favorite people to share that information that I think is valuable to you. And hopefully it's just an informal, fun way to connect with new writers for you, favorite writers. If that's, if you found yourself coming to this podcast because I've interviewed someone that you love, awesome. And kind of selfishly, two things for me: I get to meet other people and I get to promote my stuff. So boom, it's a whole concoction of goodies, of wonderful things as to why you should listen to that. So let me just refer to my notes to make sure I've covered everything because I've got the purpose, I've got what the expectations are. Personal motivation, yeah, I think I covered that, but like mostly I love sharing this journey. Writing as it goes back to so the intro to Great Writers Shared podcast was it's no secret that writing can be lonely work, but does it really have to be? And that's one of the big things that I've learned and I'm taking from just this podcast that I'm bringing into it is like I love connecting with authors. So much of our time as writers is sitting alone at a computer with your thoughts, putting that out to paper, and it's not something other people can be massively involved in when you're writing. So having that opportunity to be around other people to share in that space, um, yeah, like it can just be considerably less lonely if you find those people, which kind of leads me on to an extension of this podcast, which is I have built communities before. I've run communities. Again, I love talking to authors and having that chance to reflect on my own stuff, to learn from other people. And I have created a brand new mission for myself, which is I want to create the biggest community for authors who like the dark side, who like dark fiction online. And I'm inviting people from episode one. I've already got a bunch of people in there, but I'm inviting people who are listening to the podcast from episode one. If you want to meet other writers, if you enjoy writing dark stuff, and again, it doesn't have to be horror, it could be psycho thrillers, it could be horror, comedy, romance, the dark elements, like, the kind of sky is the limit. If you love that stuff, I do have a community that is open now. It is free to jump into. It is called Devil's Rock, which is a reflection of my publisher company, and it's free to join. I will provide all the information that in the show notes, or you can go to devilsrockbooks.com/podcast, and I'll have the information there for you to jump into the podcast and into the Discord group, join me, and just meet other authors and kind of be a bit less lonely on this journey. So, what is to come over the next few weeks? I'm going to be publishing a few interviews. It's been a bit chaotic over the last 6 months or so. So some of these interviews I did back at the beginning of when I came up with this idea. Some of them I'm grabbing from other podcasts, which were little side projects that I launched that I'm bringing back into. But I really want to kind of build a portfolio of people I love, people I'm inspired by, stuff that I think is useful for you guys and valuable. And so the first few weeks of this will be different interviews. Some of them might be a little bit not rough. The interviews might be rough, but like I'm working on bringing out those episodes in a way that builds this format. But one of the reasons I'm recording this now, one of the reasons this is for me so unscripted, is number one, I prefer unscripted stuff. I hate reading it, but also number two, I've been sitting on this idea for so long, and I kept having these thoughts of what does the first episode look like? It needs to be perfect. It needs to be this. It needs to be that. And honestly, I've just hit that point of like, it's ready to go. Share the stuff. Just start putting out content, and hopefully people will enjoy it. So there you go. That's where we are. It is very, very exciting for me to be sitting here and recording that. And I hope if you're watching on video, you'll see that in my face. If you're listening to it, I hope you'll hear that in my smile. But yeah, I invite you for however long you will stick with me to pull up a chair and let's talk writing. And there we go. Welcome to the Writer's Chair podcast. And until next time, my friends, write bravely and dream dark.